Are you ready for a little next one? Well, my name is Maggie Love. I am your moderator today, and I am so happy to be joined by these two lovely ladies.
Weird. I can't hear you.
Oh no.
But I'm hearing you coming from there.
Well, I will project this way as well. I have the same issue when we're all up here. But to kick this panel off, I feel like I can speak for everybody in this room that the two of you are so integral to our childhoods and so much of our upbringing with the accent. And I'm curious to know, when you're at these conventions, what does it mean to you to hear the impact that these characters have had on generations of fans, honestly, at this point?
It's a pretty amazing feeling, and it doesn't die down, because I think I've been doing this now. I think I started after most of these guys, but I did my first one at the very end of 2023, so it was my very first one, and of course 2024 and all, and I can't get blasé about it. It's because it means so much to people, and it touches my heart every single time. I mean, just today, just now, this guy was walking past, and he saw me, and he saw, the poster above, and he stopped, and he looked, and he went, and I said, yeah, and he just started laughing and shouting and turning in circles, and he just couldn't believe it, because this was his childhood sort of come to life. And it's a gift that keeps on giving, because for as much as people say that we gave them something, it is so amazing to receive that kind of warmth and that kind of love, and to recognize over and over and over just how much the show and the character did.
Well, my first con was your first con, too, at the end of 2023. And we're from Toronto, and so all the original X-Men voice actors are Canadian, and we were from Toronto. So we were far removed from its biggest market, which is you guys in the States. And we just, season after season, we thought we were going to get canceled. We had no idea how popular it was. We had, years later, someone showed us photos of mail in the mail room at Marvel that was never passed on to us. And we felt so badly because kids had been writing in for years. And we had no idea. We had no idea how popular it was. Most of us did not have a relationship with the X-Men before the cartoon. So it was really only when we started coming to cons that we recognized and realized from hearing people's stories how it was one of those kind of anchoring things for people's childhoods. And honestly, the writing in that first show was so amazing. And it was aimed at 8 to 12-year-olds, but they really aimed above their heads. So kids were absorbing lessons about how to treat other people, and what it meant to find a family, as opposed to like make your own, as opposed to the family you were born with, and feeling a part of something. And so that was all so very important to people for so many different reasons. And we only began to realize it when we heard people's personal stories at cons. And so it was fascinating for us and really emotional. Like there's an emotional connection that we feel when people tell us their stories. And so that's been a huge, also with the new show, because we're all over the place, recording in Toronto and Vancouver and LA and New York and wherever people are. In the old days, there was 8 of us, except for Alison, she was always off doing theater, but there'd be like 8 of us in one room, and it would take all day to do an episode. It was a nightmare, frankly. Anyway, I like hearing everybody just once when you're starting a new cartoon, make sure you're in the same world, all that kind of stuff. But now, with the new cartoon, I go into a studio all by myself in Toronto, and all the people from Disney and Marvel are on Zoom on a monitor in front of me. And the only way that I got to meet the new actors in '97 was going to cons. And so to find that, how lovely Magneto is, Matthew, So it's that, and it's been old home week for us. So we get to have like a reunion every time we go and meeting all these new people, as well as all of you. So it's a win-win-win-win-win. So thank you. It's a pleasure to come and talk to people. It really is.
It is so great too, and it's interesting when you talk about the fact that a lot of you didn't really know a lot about X-Men coming into it, and it's so interesting because for a lot of audiences, I think that was their first exposure to X-Men, so we were all kind of on the same page together there. But how has your relationship to X-Men kind of evolved over the years as you have kind of understood the world that it's part of, especially coming back to it? I mean, for you, you came back as Valerie, as a new character, and then hearing how fans continue to relate to these characters. How has it changed your opinion on Storm and Jean over the years?
Well, Jean Grey will always be in my blood and in my bones. I feel like she's kind of in my soul, really. And what was the question?
Like, how has your relationship to those characters kind of evolved over the years? Because you were kind of helping to introduce a whole generation to
No,
these
I know,
characters.
and a lot of people got introduced to the comics as kids by watching the cartoon. And in fact, the live action, this is always, I find so interesting, is that Larry Houston, who's the original director and producer of the original show, got to choose which mutants to feature in the original cartoon. Out of, I don't know, what, like 170 mutants or more that he could have chosen? So he chose this group. And I said to him once at a con, what would be the collective noun to describe a group of X-Men? Like a school of fish, a herd of cows. And he had to think about it for a while, but the moderator came back 20 minutes later and he said, I got it. The collective noun for a group of X-Men would be a family of X-Men. And Larry created this family, and then the director of the first live action movie knew nothing about X-Men. All he did was watch the cartoon. So that's why all those characters were featured in all the live action, and that's why they've kind of come through to today. And also, we've been traveling occasionally to cons with a comic dealer. And so I learned way more about, and he's one of Marvel's biggest individual customers, so I learned way more about comics than I had bothered to learn over the last 30 years. So I now feel like I know a lot more about the different, someone will say, oh, that's from, Uncanny X-Men number 156. And I go, oh, okay. And then I go look at it. So yeah, I've learned a lot more. I'm not faking it as much. I used to fake it really well. And I actually have something to say about stuff now.
Yeah, I feel that my appreciation of who Aurora Monroe, who Storm is, has deepened. And I think as I have lived more life, I think I understand better what strength is, and what power is, and what it can be. And so it has made it, at the same time, easier and sort of more complex to go into the studio. And I agree with you that you can't sit on the surface anymore. One, because you know the character better. Two, because as a person, you've just learned more as a human being navigating the world. And three, because of you guys. You guys weren't real to us at all the first time around. We were doing a gig, and I was a theater artist, so I was used to an audience being right there and feeling them, but we didn't have that then. So it was okay, let me go in, let me do my lines as well as I possibly can and get out of the studio. And now, yeah, I missed the group records completely. But now you guys are very much in my head, to the point where I have to get you to hell out. Because I still have to go in and do a job and do service to the words as they are written and give the director what they're asking for. But I just feel sometimes as though I am now just much more aware of exactly who my audience is. That they not only have faces, but they have stories. And I have to hope that helps and grounds my performance instead of making me absolutely terrified. Because it's a sense of responsibility now. Before, my responsibility was really to the work, to myself as a professional. And now I also feel a responsibility to the audience in a way that I haven't felt except for live theater. So it's kind of cool.
Well, I was just going to say that those first scripts, when I read them, I had done quite a bit of animation by that point, mostly with the kids, voices and, stuff like that. So these scripts were something completely different. I'd never read anything like them before. They had depth and emotion, and I felt like I knew these characters, and so that was all very different. And it was a different kind of cartoon. And I have to say about Val Cooper, I find her very interesting because for me, Val kind of represents humans changing attitudes towards the mutants. So it looks like she's flip-flopping around and changing her mind, but in fact, she's really just reflecting humanity's view of the mutants. And my favorite moment, I think, in season 1 of 97 is because there's so much, we're trying to cram so much into each episode of 97, because we're only doing 9 to 10 per season, whereas in the old show, some seasons had 26, and there were varying amounts. So there was time to let the stories breathe. And in 97, it just feels so intense all the time. And there's that moment where they've got Magneto, like a magnificent beast, kind of chained up against the wall. And Val walks in and he raises his head. And they left a silence there that's very sort of Miyazaki, and it's, for me, that was such a wonderful moment to let it breathe, seeing this sort of magnificent being up against the wall, and she just says, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." And so that, there are lots of other great moments, but for me, just having that silence, I think you can hear water dripping, and then obviously she lets him go, she helps him escape, and that whole enough moment. So I don't even remember what the question was. Sorry, I'm just babbling now.
It was such a fantastic point to bring up, because it does make me think about the fact that the original series and also 97 are still so forward-looking in their storytelling. It's so rich, and I always look back on the original animated series as being like a really good launch point for a lot of people to understand race, politics, and a lot of really heavy topics. And I do feel like Canadian animation was doing their own thing up there, and then was bringing it down here into America and just.
Well, we can't take credit for it. It was an American show. The writers for the Blue Walls are American. Larry Houston was the original director-producer. All the cast were the voice director was this brilliant guy, Dan Hennessy, who voiced a bunch of characters. I always felt like if I was sick one day, that Dan could just play Gene if we needed him to. But yeah, and a lot of us have theater backgrounds. So I think that was a factor in what they were looking for as well.
Just curious, when you were getting those scripts and seeing how much depth, you both keep mentioning, what were your reactions to those scripts? Because it really was so ahead of the game in terms of children's animation.
Well, for me, it was pretty par for the course because I hadn't done animation before, and I fully expected that scripts were supposed to be meaty, and you don't come from doing it. At the time when I auditioned for it, I was doing Shakespeare, so it was this was just right up my alley. It was perfect, and so I didn't have anything. I didn't have other animation scripts. I didn't have other kids shows. This was the very first voice or animation that I ever did. I jumped sort of right into the very deep end of the pool. So what I was comparing the scripts to were the theater scripts that I had been lucky enough to work on, and yeah, they were great. They had meat, and that was what stopped me from being terrified, because otherwise I would have thought, I don't know this world. I don't know animation. I don't know these superhero stories. But the fact that the scripts were about meaty issues and it's so well written, that's when I relaxed and went, okay, you do what you always do. You trust the script, you read the story, you study it, you know what the motivation is, and you go in there and you do it.
Yeah, when you go in for, personally, when you audition for cartoons and you get a job, you kind of go in, when it's little kids cartoons, you go in with like 4 or 5 ideas. You know, what the voice would sound like, a funny laugh, or whatever, you're adding stuff, and they like you to be funny, which I always appreciate. So you know, you're funnier than the script, and nobody gets, you know, upset at that. And I feel like, I mean, for me, Jean wasn't, it was still a character voice. When people talk to me, my natural voice is a bit deeper and a bit rougher sometimes, but so she was always sort of pitched up, like, and she was always concerned, like, Scott, you know, Professor, oh, Scott, you know, it's so beautiful, I wish you could see it. It was all very, and people used to kid me in the recruitment course, because we wear these big headphones, right, with these big, like, Princess Leia kind of over your ears. And I would always record Jean holding on to my headphones. So, I mean, because she's a telepath, I guess. I'm not even sure why I did it. But, because for me, cartoons were always very physical. When you're doing little kid cartoons, and you're, what the character looks like, and you're putting it all out there. So this was very different, but you're lucky because, like, it was so far and away better than any animation script. And I was doing a vampire show at the time, which was interesting because that show also dealt with the sort of themes of atonement for past behavior and the sort of humanity question about what is human and what isn't, what makes a human a human. So, yeah, I would just stay up all night shooting and show up Friday mornings without having slept. So I don't have a clear memory of a lot of that time, I have to say.
What was the name of that show again? Because it's like right on the tip of my tongue.
Forever Night.
Yes, loved it so much. I hear it clap, yep. It's such a good show. I am really curious to know, like, coming back to the X-Men so many years later, what was that entire process like? And I mean, you had to come back as a brand new character. What was that like, getting to kind of approach the story from a new kind of world?
Well, you know, it's funny, I said to somebody the other day, you know when you, like, didn't get that promotion 10 years ago, and then that's all anybody wants to ask you about? So I get it, people are curious. They actually sought us out, and I had to audition twice for Jean. You'd think that 76 episodes would be enough of an audition, but apparently not. And they wanted it to be just like, they kept saying, just like the original show. So I never really got an answer for why I wasn't, and I was kind of devastated at first, to be honest. And because Jean is, I didn't realize how connected I felt to Jean until I wasn't playing her. But then they asked me to do Val, and I feel so connected to the X-Men in general. So that's, you know, it was interesting. So I didn't really audition for Val. But the very first report of '97, they had Val that I did. They had Val on a treadmill, and she was talking to Cyclops. And in her line, she says, "Oh, Scott," or something. And I went, I don't really think you should have me say Scott, because it's going to come out Scott, you know, and it's just, I'm trying not to sound like Jean. But it was an odd process, you know, and it was sort of over COVID, right? It was in 2021. It was a lot of us voice actors had setups in our houses. So I was in my pajamas doing, you know, cartoons in my bedroom and pretending that the camera on my computer didn't work. And they'd all go, "Ooh, let's put you on Zoom." And I'd go, "Oh, I'm so sorry."
Such a classic move.
Or I can't work it. I don't know, I'm such a Luddite. But yeah, no thank you. I'm in my bedroom. You don't need to see that. So it was a very weird, disconnected time, actually. And again, I feel more connected to the whole show now that we're doing cons and meeting the other actors. And we're on WhatsApp groups together and stuff. So that's always, I feel very connected to everybody.
Does the WhatsApp group have a chat name, like a funny X-Men name, or no?
No, a lot of them are very funny, but no, it's not and in fact, I only met Alison. Of course, I knew about her, or I knew by reputation and my name, that very first con we went to, because all during the original X-Men show when we were recording, Alison was in Stratford, and she would come in by herself, like on Mondays, right? That was her dark day, to record. And we would all go in on Fridays. And frankly, like an 8-hour record, we used to smoke in the room. That's how long ago it was. And when I got pregnant, I had to actually ask people not to smoke while we were recording. It was a long time ago.
That was a very long time ago. Coming back to it, I must say it was a little bit scary because you're talking about reprising a role that you did 30 years ago. I felt ancient. And I thought, you know, and I kept asking them, I said, well, I've got to lighten her up. I sound so old. And they went, no, you don't. Keep going. Just keep going. But it was a little bit scary and it was liberating at the same time. What was really cool, what helped a lot, was I remember the first day I went in to record. Of course, I'm nervous, and I thought there was going to be butterflies in my stomach. And those are butterflies that I've always told myself, if you don't, when you get to the point where you don't feel those butterflies anymore, when you got to perform for the first time, stop performing. Because it means you don't care anymore. It's just by rote. So those butterflies were flying. And I come up in the cab or the Uber or whatever, and I went, it's vaguely familiar. Why is this building? And I walk in, and it's the same studio that I used to record Storm in over 25 years previously. And
Same engineers are walking around saying hello.
And you walk in, and there's the microphone and the music stand, and you just flip open. And of course, just about the first thing they wanted me to say was, I am Storm, mistress of the elements. Oh, this is good. I can do this. You know, but what was running in our heads at the same time, again, you guys, because we'd done a couple of cons by then, I don't know how many people have come up to me and gone, Disney better not mess with my childhood memories. And you're in there going, holy, I don't want to mess with anybody's childhood memories. I gotta get this right.
Star Trek. Star Trek.
Yeah.
I mean, Star Wars. Oh my God. I just did that thing. I apologize.
It's too funny. Well, speaking of Disney, obviously we just got the season 2 trailer that just dropped this week. Was that your first time getting to see the trailer? Or same as all of us? Yeah?
Yep.
What can you tease at all about some of those scenes that we saw in the trailer? Were you surprised by the ones that they selected? I'm always curious, like the reaction to like, oh, they picked that scene for the trailer.
Whenever we are asked about stuff that is still to come, can you guys see a thing? Is there a red dot on my forehead? Because
The Disney drone is going to come to the ceiling and take us out.
we don't say anything. I say nothing. I say nothing. I'm saying nothing. Nothing.
Back at the original series, can you talk a little bit about some of your favorite plot lines and storylines kind of came about in the original animated series? Some of the ones that were like, this really like impacted me or made you think differently about something, because like we said, you know, there were so many really heavy, really smart stories for those characters.
Should I go? For me, it's the Phoenix Saga. I mean, Larry Houston, who was the original producer and director, knew everything there was to know about X-Men, and he knew he wanted to do the Phoenix Saga, and to do it right, he needed at least 9 episodes. And back then, we were doing, I think that season we did 26, it was season 3. He also told me that he waited till season 3 so that Stan Lee would leave him alone. And I think his Phoenix Saga, the way he presented it in that season 3, I don't think they're going to be able to do a better job in live action. I know they keep trying, and it's kind of painful to watch. You just want to go, maybe give up now, you know?
Please.
So that for me, and the idea, so many people come up to me with Phoenix tattoos, and I realize that it's kind of this feeling that we all have that power within us to that we need to control, but that can also, that is, that's a weird, did you make that noise?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
I'll do it again if you
All right. But yeah, that to me is one of my favorite stories that he managed to get into it in its entirety.
And of course I've forgotten the name of it. Was it Savage Land, Savage Heart? There is one where Storm, and I tell this story a lot, but it is the one that sort of made me sit and think more about the character that I was playing. You know, that if you take certain things for granted and you say things certain ways, and then it was after that, going back and watching it and thinking, okay, I have to take this part here that I didn't know the first time around, and I have to make sure that it is somewhere in my body, in my heart, when I do the second story. But remember when she just lost her stuff, and she was wreaking havoc. Sauron had manipulated her mind somehow, and she was just messing with stuff. And at the end of it, she and Rogue have this conversation. And you know, when I watched it again, and you're sort of waiting for Storm to apologize, you know, I'm so sorry that I blah blah blah, and I would never, and instead she said that felt so good. After all of these years of holding it in, to finally be able to let go, never have I felt so free. And I went, ooh, well, I just learned something about this character that I have been playing, and just the level of control that she had to exercise. And I don't know, I think as a black woman, yes, but as a black woman, when you're dealing so often with the trope of the angry black woman, that you can't express certain things because it makes you seem angry with the world and outraged as soon as you say the slightest thing. And I just put two and two together, and I thought, that is really, really interesting. And it's not anything that I ever play, it's just like something new and different that just dropped into my soul. So that was kind of cool.
I don't think of you as angry, I just think you're hungry. That it's time to feed Alison.
That happens sometimes. Other times I'm just angry.
That's why she gave you the little Ricola before. Yep.
So a little hit of sugar before the panel. We've been doing this for a couple of years now. You don't learn that lesson twice.
Outside of your own characters, are there X-Men characters that you find yourself like drawn to in terms of maybe the stories you've heard about them, the stories you got to experience as your character working with those characters, or just something that you kind of like gravitate towards in the time, you know, like between now and then, that you're like, oh, I learned about this character, and this character's like really cool.
I don't know, I think maybe as a follow-on to the stuff that I was just talking about, I've always appreciated Wolverine's ability to just be angry all the time. Just hell with it. Come on, Bob, let's go. So I mean, I just love and appreciate that, and it'd be great to just walk through life going, you want to fight? Let's fight.
You know, Cal is not unlike that in real life. Wolverine had all the great lines. Like one of my favorites is, I hate ducks. Remember that one? He had all the great lines. Yeah, I don't know. That whole Wolverine Cyclops thing. I'm kind of team Cyclops. Don't tell Cal that because he calls me Genie in rare times. But because Cyclops, he was the reliable one, and you keep Wolverine around. It's like the one your mother hates who comes and picks you up on a motorcycle. It was her wild side. But, I don't know what characters in that way. Who would I want to be? I don't know.
Well, are you ready to see if we have any fan questions in the audience as we find out? Any hands? Ready? Oh, two. Okay. Let's start right here. We'll start right here first.
Hey guys, how you guys doing? You guys had some incredible episodes in X-Men 97. Some really powerful storylines for Storm and for Jean. Did it ever get really intense in those booths, doing that to where you guys had to take a step back and say, okay, this is just a show, I need to take a breath,
Just so you know, I'm not Jean in 97. I'm Jean in the original in Phoenix, but I'm Val Cooper in 97.
Val Cooper, yeah.
Yes, but you take it away. Take it away for...
Not really, because I mean this is what we do for a living. So I don't, it was pretty intense. Which one was it? I think it was episode 8.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
when she's trapped and she's doing her thing with the adversary, and of course, I also played the adversary. One of these days, I would love to do that, where I'm actually doing the storm, and then the adversary, and they're actually talking to each other. But Disney didn't let me do. I did the adversary first, and then a good long time intervened, and then they brought me back in to do the storm part. But there was a time, when you're doing that and you're trapped in there, it wasn't as much the psychological and the emotional stuff, because that's not my personal fear. I have to act that. But actually, physically, if you're not careful, you will hyperventilate. And so they were getting worried. And they were like, Alison, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. But sometimes they were saying, just breathe. Just breathe, because I was really getting into it.
It was pretty strong.
I was getting
You did a great
deep
job.
in, but I wasn't worried about it. The voice director said, just take a couple minutes and then let's go back, because it's physical, and they didn't want me wrecking my voice, and they didn't want me, just going too far out. That was the only time I was there, because I was getting right into that, not being able to breathe in that box.
I think episode 8 or 2 was when that monologue for Val was written about, and I felt a certain amount of pressure for that, because I recognized that the showrunner, and I recognize it because he told me many, many, many times. So I was like, okay, I get it. This is the thesis. This was his thesis for the whole X-Men 97. And I felt this pressure doing it. And I knew it was going to be against a montage of all this stuff going on. And I knew that, that famous line was at the end, Magneto was right. And so I remember feeling kind of pressured there. But, honestly, when you're in the room, you kind of get transported, and you're sort of so involved with what you're doing that it doesn't ever get out of hand. Although I remember I had rosacea, so I remember going to a dermatologist once, and I thought I told him what I did for a living. And I said, he said, well, what are your triggers that make you flush? And he said, was it like wine? Was it spicy food? And I thought for a bit, and I said, well, actually, it's cartoons. And he looked at me, and I said, because, you have all that energy, and it just like ends in your face, because you don't get it out physically. And he paused, and he looked at me, and he said, well, maybe you could just sit on the couch and enjoy them, and not, I was like, what? I swear I told him what I did for a living. And I went, okay, thank you for that advice. I will try to calm down next time I'm watching Scooby-Doo. So yeah, it's about a lot. People think it's just voice acting, and it's not. It's acting. And physically, you sort of can't help but reproduce in a small way what's going on screen, especially if there's action stuff and there's impact grunts, and so it does take a lot of energy, and you do have to, it takes a lot more energy than people think. Like, I come out of there kind of exhausted, frankly. So I forget what the question was.
I think you hit it. But I also think you raise a good point too, that a lot of people think of voice actors as just voice actors, but you're performing, you're an actor, like fully. It's just cut the voice off, it's acting. You do so much in the booth.
Yeah.
And it's when you're doing, when you do voice workshops or anything, it's very much a physical thing. Like I don't like doing a voice if I can't see artwork for the characters. So how they look, how their face is, do they look down their nose at people, how do they carry themselves? It all informs the voice, so that when they put the voice to the picture, it all becomes, one unit. And so it actually is a It's a very physical thing, I find. And I hate sitting. I can't sit down and do cartoons. I have to stand and I have to be able to use my hands and, you know.
Oh yeah, you gotta see me in there. They sort of move the baffles back a bit because I'm going to be gesticulating and doing the whole thing, because when people call me a voice actor, I usually correct them fairly gently when I say I am an actor. The voice work is part of what I do. And these days, it's almost all that I do. But I still think of myself as an actor, not a voice actor. I don't know what that is. You know, I act. It's just that sometimes I have a big stage and sometimes I just have a microphone.
I will say that my very first job, after auditioning for like 3 years, you have an agent, you know, who's a voice agent in your agency, and they send you out auditions. And, you know, I auditioned for a couple of years, I wasn't getting anything, and I finally got my first animation job. And I was terrified, and I walked in this studio, and it was one head of a two-headed monster in Beetlejuice, and the other head was Ron Rubin, who played the original Morph in X-Men. And there are a lot of, there are kind of groups, different categories of voice actors. Like there's people who are sort of all-around actors who do theater, they do film, they do animation, they can do it all. There are people who are just voice, who just do voice work. And they can be quite brilliant at, you know, voice matching and all that stuff. And then there are like comedians who can do impressions. And back then, they used to give the male actors, like a list of impressions that they could do to do incidental characters. Right, so in X-Men, all the boys used to compete for the incidental characters, and oh, let's do this like Jack Nicholson. They'd all do their best Jack Nicholson, you know. But when I got behind that mic, and Ron, who's kind of hyperactive, was like, what do you want, what do you want, what do you want? And he did about 4 impressions in a row and made like the sound of a door opening, and I went, oh my God. I know, and I put up my hand, I literally put up my hand, and on the other side of the glass, I went, yes, Catherine. I said, I think I'm in the wrong place. And it took me years, and I thought, why do I keep getting animation jobs? And it took me years of doing it to feel comfortable. And to realize, okay, I'm gonna go in there with like 5 different ideas. And in fact, when I first auditioned for X-Men, I auditioned for Storm. She had this great monologue. I don't even remember auditioning for Jean. I remember the time thinking, well, this really doesn't feel right, but all right, I'm just going to say them. Maybe they're just using this monologue for everybody to audition with, you know, because it's actually a great monologue. But again, I forgot what the question was. Or if there was a question.
Just talk about how amazing actors are at voice work.
Yes, there's that. Or comedians.
Yeah, that was true. Do you have any more questions? I think you had your hand raised before, and Marshall heard next to you. Hi, what's your name? What's your question?
Hi, my name is Kat. My question is, I never grew up with the show, actually. I remember seeing clips of it online, and that was really cool. But I was born a little too late to see it on TV or anything. But now when 97 coming out, I was like, oh, maybe I should check it out. So I actually just started watching the show for the first time, like, so what I wanted to know is that...
Welcome to the club.
Thank you. I love the first season. So I think someone else voiced Storm in the first season, so I've heard of it, unfortunately. Yeah. Looking for...
Yes, but they use her.
Yeah. Yeah. So looking forward to that. But anyway, so what I wanted to know is that for anyone like me who's seeing the show for the first time now, what do you think we want people to take away from it? Like from a modern perspective, from both the performances and from the show as a whole.
You know, coming at it as an adult is not that much of a stretch. That writing in that first show, like I said, it might have been, you know, ostensibly for kids, young men. You know, I don't think they were aiming at particularly women. It's a great cartoon for girls and young women because of all the incredibly strong female characters. But the writing was quite sophisticated. So it was sort of dealing with issues, and kids were absorbing these issues without even realizing it. So coming at it as an adult, I had someone come to my table once actually with his girlfriend who said, I told her she couldn't watch 97 until she watched the original because I didn't want to answer any stupid questions. I said, oh, really? I love your relationship. That's fantastic. But I think watching that original show can really inform 97 in ways that if you don't know the original show, you might be missing out on a lot of the nuance. Because all the creators of '97 are huge fans of the original show, and they drop like little references and Easter eggs all over the place, and it's very reverential. So it's good that you're watching it, and then you can, it's right up there on Disney Plus beside it. So and then you can move on to '97. So I think that's great.
So much.
Thank you. Get the next show of hands. We got two on this side. We'll go right here first.
Hi there. I've loved what you guys do, since the original show. Are there any characters that you wish the characters you voice either gotten to spend more time with or hope they get to spend more time with in future seasons?
There are a lot of new mutants. There are mutants I never even heard. I actually have to have the script like Wikipedia up on my computer, and I read the script, and I have to look these characters up, and I know that nobody else knows who they are because some other character will go, "You, so-and-so, stepbrother of so-and-so," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, nobody knows who he is." And if he dies at the end, I don't even bother to read the Wikipedia entry. Like, I go to the end and see who's still alive. Sorry, what was your question?
I love the relationship between the women.
Yes.
And I am hugely looking forward and hoping that they will continue to do that. I know that in the animated series, it seemed as though it was very much Storm and Rogue, and then in '97 it was Storm and Jean, and I would just like to see more of that explored.
Me too.
Somebody pointed out to me, they said, you realize that all the women in X-Men fly and all the men have to be carried or take the Blackbird.
As it should be. That was a great question. I know we had a question right here too.
Thank you, yes. Thank you both for being here with us. Thank you both for being with us here this afternoon. When you got the call for X-Men '97 and that first time when you all together in the room, did you have a sense that lightning was going to hit twice?
Well, did we ever get? Oh no.
No, none of us have ever been in the same room for '97, so it's been a very different experience actually than not for you, I guess.
No,
you're always.
Yeah.
But no, you know what? We were just so, as Alison said before, we were just so hoping and praying to whatever gods you pray to that that it had the original. It was worthy of being a continuation of the original. And they did that, you hear that music come on, and the animation is spectacular. So it was a relief. I think most of us felt incredible relief once we saw it.
Yeah. But that is, as Catherine said, I think right at the very beginning, that's what these cons represent for us. I have never felt part of a team until '97 and doing these cons. You were told you were part of a team. You acted like you were part of a team because that's what the script says, and you drop that in and you hope that it reads in the relationships. But it wasn't until you start coming to these cons and hanging out with people, with your colleagues, that you go, okay, yes, this is a family, this is a team, and we are part of a community. And again, I have no idea how that informs or underpins anything that I do in the series now versus what I did then.
Oh, I bet it does.
It must, because I do now feel part of a team, part of a family, and part of a larger community, and that's pretty cool.
I mean, I felt that with the first season, the first season of the first show. I think we did it most of the first season, and then some of the second season. We were literally all in the same room, but we're all at 8 mics, and even when someone's standing beside you, the engineer has to switch from mic to mic, so it's not like you can react So if Alison says something, you have to wait like 1 mosquito, 2 mosquito, 3 mosquito, and then respond. But at least you're in the world and you can respond. Most of the time we get the voice director to read with us, and she's on a screen in front of me in LA. And if I've been lucky enough in that she's recorded the other actor already that's in the scene, she can kind of give me a sense of what that other actor has done. But it wasn't Disney who brought us to cons. It was us as actors sort of reaching out and getting into the con world individually, and then other people bringing us together as a group. And so I'm grateful for that, because I really think it did. When we started to record again after I finally met Magneto, and that meant the world for me, and feeling a part of it, because it can feel, when you do voice acting for the 90% of the time, you're in the room by yourself. And normally I like that, because you can walk in 45 minutes in your comfy shoes and and if I'm doing my PBS cartoon, you sing a little song and you leave. Those early X-Men records for the first show were sort of an anomaly. And they were like tragically long. It was like, we're talking like 8.5 hours. Then they'd have a dinner break. Then some of the actors wouldn't come back after the dinner break and they couldn't find them, I won't mention names. And then it was just like this endless day. And you could do like a pass on a scene with 8 people in the room, and then you all sit in your stools and you talk. So we had a relationship going, unfortunately exclusive of Storm, who was never there. But and then they say, okay, we're gonna do another pass, and then they give people individual notes. And then you sit down again and they wait while they listen and they make their decisions about which line, which take, which line. And then you get up again, they go, okay, we're gonna do pick up just, Cyclops' line 8, and we're gonna pick up. So it's this laborious process that used to drive me absolutely crazy, honestly. So, like I said, first day of a new cartoon, love to hear the world, love to do a group report. After that, let me go into my comfy shoes for 45 minutes and do it on my own.
It's interesting to hear the process of bringing this show to life. We are all out of time for fan questions, but are the two of you heading back to your booths today? Are you here tomorrow still?
So if anybody has any more questions, come on by. We're happy to talk to you.
Let's put our hands together one more time for Alison and Kathy. Thank you so much for joining us.